Brothers and sisters of Burkina Faso, honorable members of the government, valiant soldiers of our defense and security forces, my comrades in arms, esteemed members of the diplomatic corps, journalists from near and far, people of Africa, my people, and to all the people of the world who are watching and listening today, I thank you for gathering here. The official purpose of this address was to speak about the state of our nation, Burkina Faso. I was going to speak about our fight for food sovereignty, about the seeds we are planting, the wells we are digging, the future we are trying to build with our own hands from our own soil. That is a story of hope, and it is a story that must be told. But there are times when the story of one's own house is part of a much larger story. There are times when the cries from your neighbor's home are so loud they become the sounds of your own home. The world does not wait for our schedules. The conscience of humanity does not follow a diplomatic timetable, and my conscience as a man, as a soldier, as a son of Africa does not allow me to speak only of our own struggles today, while a greater fire threatens to consume the entire global village. For too long, we in the Sahel, we in Africa, have been lectured. The powerful nations of the world, those who built their wealth on the resources of our lands, tell us to focus only on our own problems. They say, your people are hungry, why do you look elsewhere? They say, you have violence in your villages, why do you speak of violence in other lands? They say, fix your own house before you comment on the houses of others. Today I stand here to tell you that this logic is a cage. It is a mental prison built to keep us small. It is the logic of the master who tells the slave to worry only about the fit of his own shackles, so he does not see that his brother is being whipped in the same field. It is the logic of the jailer who tells the prisoner in solitary confinement to be grateful for his small ration of bread, so he does not hear the screams from the torture chamber down the hall. They want us isolated in our struggles so we never realize our collective power. They want us to believe our poverty is our own fault, our instability our own creation, so we never question the global system that perpetuates it. Our struggle here in Burkina Faso for true sovereignty is not separate from the struggles of the world. Our fight to control our own resources is the same fight as that of every nation in the global south that has seen its wealth siphoned away. Our fight for dignity is the same fight for every human being who is told they are lesser, who is treated as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. We are a poor nation in material terms. I do not hide this. We do not have great armies that can project power across continents. We do not have vast treasuries or the ability to print money out of thin air. We do not have media empires to shape the global narrative, but we have something more powerful. We have our moral sovereignty. We have our voice, a voice that remembers centuries of oppression and the taste of freedom. We have our conscience forged in the heat of the Sahelian sun and the crucible of anti-colonial struggle. And we have the truth. Today it is my duty to use these weapons. My grandfather was a farmer in the north of our country. He lived his whole life on the edge of the desert. He taught me things that no university could ever teach. He taught me that when the rains fail for one season, you can survive on the grain you stored from the last. But when the rains fail for 5 seasons, the entire village is in peril. He taught me that you cannot reason with a swarm of locusts. You must stand together with your neighbors to drive them away, or they will devour everything. He understood that a sick goat, if not cared for, can infect the whole herd. His world was small, but his wisdom was vast. He knew, with the certainty of the earth itself, that survival is a collective act. Our world today has become a very small field, and the wisdom of my grandfather has never been more urgent. There are fires raging in this field. We see them on our phones. We feel the heat and the rising prices of bread and fuel, even here in landlocked Ouagadougou, and the keepers of the global order, the self-proclaimed firefighters, tell us these are complex, contained fires. They use their big words, their empty jargon, to confuse us. They speak of geopolitics, strategic interests, proxies, asymmetric warfare, and deterrence. These words are a smokescreen designed to hide a simple, brutal reality. I want you to listen past this noise. When a doctor in a makeshift clinic with no electricity has to perform surgery on a child using the light of a mobile phone and without anesthesia, there is no complexity. It is simple. It is a nightmare. When a father carries the shredded pieces of his family in plastic bags for burial, there is no strategic interest to debate. It is the end of the world for him. When an entire population of millions, half of them children, are systematically starved, when their water is cut off, when their hospitals, universities, and bakeries are deliberately targeted and turned to rubble, it is not complicated. It is a siege. It is a methodical act of collective punishment. It is an abomination in the eyes of God and humanity. I am speaking, of course, of Gaza. For months, the world has been a witness to a crime in slow motion. We see journalists, poets, and doctors being targeted and killed for bearing witness. We see a level of destruction, a level of cruelty, that should make every single human being question what it means to be civilized in the 21st century. And what has been the response from the powerful, from those who never tire of lecturing us on democracy and human rights? They have not sent flotillas of aid. They have sent more bombs and ammunition. They have not used their immense power to demand a ceasefire. They have used their veto power to block it again and again. They speak endlessly of a right to self-defense, but they refuse to speak of the right of an occupied people to resist, the right to exist, the right not to be ethnically cleansed from their ancestral land. Let me be absolutely clear. We in Burkina Faso condemn all terrorism without exception. Our people are among its greatest victims. Our soldiers die fighting it every single day. The killing of any innocent civilian, whether they are a Palestinian child in Khan Yunis or an Israeli child in a kibbutz, is a profound tragedy, and it is wrong. But we must not be fools. We must not allow our moral clarity to be manipulated. We must have the courage to look at the root of the tree, not just the bitter fruit it produces. The situation in Palestine did not begin on October 7th. That is a lie. It began decades ago. It is the story of the Nakba. It is a story of occupation, of land being relentlessly taken, of homes being demolished, of ancient olive groves being uprooted, of a people being corralled into smaller and smaller spaces. It is the last festering colonial project of the 20th century defiantly bleeding into the 21st. We in Africa know this story intimately. We have read this book before. The past laws of apartheid South Africa, we see them in the checkpoints of the West Bank. The creation of Bantustan's two warehouse and native population, we see it in the siege of Gaza. The strategy of collective punishment used by colonial armies from Algeria to Kenya. We see it in the destruction of Gaza's civic life. The language of dehumanization, calling people human animals, is the same language colonizers used to justify their crimes against our ancestors. How can we, whose grandparents fought and died to throw off these very chains, remain silent when we see them being locked onto the wrists and ankles of our Palestinian brothers and sisters? And now, as if the fire in that small corner of the field were not enough, we hear the loud, arrogant drums of another war, a bigger war, a war against the sovereign nation of Iran. Once again they tell us it is complicated. They speak of nuclear ambitions and regional destabilization, but we see the same tired pattern. A powerful, nuclear-armed state backed by the world's greatest superpower manufacturers, a pretext to attack a sovereign nation that dares to challenge its regional dominance, a nation that dares to chart its own course outside of the Western sphere of influence. They create a narrative of pure evil, painting a nation of 80 million people with a rich and ancient civilization as a caricature. They sanction them, they starve their economy, they assassinate their scientists and generals, and they push them into a corner. And when that nation inevitably pushes back, they hold up their hands and scream aggression to justify the war they wanted all along. An attack on Iran would be an act of global madness. It would ignite a fire that would make the blaze of Iraq and Afghanistan look like campfires. It would set the entire world on fire. It would shatter the global economy. And who would pay the highest price? Not the sons and daughters of the politicians and pundits who call for war from their air-conditioned studios and safeguarded communities. No. The price would be paid by ordinary people. In Iran, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and yes, here in Africa, the price of bread would skyrocket. The price of fuel would become unbearable. The resulting instability would spread like a virus, creating more refugees, more poverty, and more fertile ground for the very extremist groups we are bleeding to fight right here in the Sahel. This is why the fire in our neighbor's field is our fire too. This is why the hunger in Gaza is our hunger. This is why the threat of war on Iran is a direct threat to the stability and future of Burkina Faso. We are all connected in this small, fragile village called Earth. So what are we to do? We, the small nations, the underdeveloped nations, the nations of the global south, are we to do as we are told, to watch in silence, to issue weak, pathetic statements of concern that are written to offend no one and achieve nothing? Are we to beg for peace from the very same people who profit from the sale of weapons and the chaos of war? No, the time for begging is over. The time for being concerned is over.